What if you could grow more food with less effort? Indigenous tribes have been farming for centuries, using clever techniques passed down through generations. From innovative planting methods to sustainable practices, here are the 20 farming hacks that can help you grow more with less effort, straight from the wisdom of Indigenous cultures. 1. Companion planting. The Three Sisters method stands as perhaps the greatest agricultural teamwork success story ever told. Native American tribes didn't just plant crops, they created plant communities where each member pulls its weight. Corn reaches skyward first, creating living poles that beans gratefully climb. As beans twist upward, their roots busy themselves feeding the soil with nitrogen that corn hungrily devours. Meanwhile, squash spreads its broad leaves across the ground like a living mulch, shading out weeds and keeping precious moisture locked in the soil. The ground stays cool, the weeds stay away, and 3 different foods grow in the space normally needed for one. This plant friendship system works because it mimics what happens naturally in forests. Plants help each other out, they don't compete for the same resources. The Haudenosaunee people observed these relationships and brought them into their gardens centuries before scientists understood the chemistry behind it. When beans fix nitrogen, they're essentially creating free fertilizer. When corn offers structural support, it's providing free trellises. And when squash covers the ground, it's delivering free weed control. It's not just efficient, it's a beautiful dance of cooperation that produces more food with less work, proving that sometimes the best solutions come from watching how nature already solves problems. 2. Slash and mulch. While slash and burn gets all the attention, many Indigenous farmers figured out something better. Just skip the fire part. In places like Central America, local farmers developed slash and mulch systems where they chop down unwanted plants but leave them right where they fall. The cut vegetation doesn't go up in smoke. Instead, it slowly breaks down, feeding the soil bit by bit like a time-released vitamin for your garden. The layer of dead plants and branches creates a protective blanket over the soil, stopping erosion when heavy rains come, and keeping precious moisture from evaporating during dry spells. The real genius here is patience. Unlike burning, which gives a quick but short-lived boost of nutrients, mulching delivers a steady supply of goodness to the soil as microbes turn dead plants into rich humus. Maya farmers in Guatemala have practiced this method for generations, creating incredibly productive plots without expensive fertilizers. The mulch layer also becomes home to helpful insects that eat crop pests and earthworms that tunnel through the soil, making it looser and healthier. It's a perfect example of working smarter rather than harder, letting nature's recycling system do the heavy lifting while farmers can focus on planting and harvesting instead of constantly fighting weeds and poor soil. 3. Using termite mounds for fertilizer. Some farming tricks sound strange until you see them work, like digging into termite mounds for garden gold. Across parts of Africa, farmers have discovered that the soil in and around termite mounds grows plants like nobody's business. These industrious insects collect plant material from far and wide, drag it underground, chew it up and essentially turn it into super soil. They mix in clay particles that hold water better, add their own waste, and create tunnels that help roots breathe. The result? Mound soil can contain up to 4 times more essential nutrients than the surrounding dirt. Zambian and Zimbabwean farmers don't need soil testing kits to know this works. They have seen the proof in bigger harvests for generations. They carefully collect soil from abandoned mounds and spread it where crops need an extra boost. The termites have already done the hard work of gathering nutrients from a wide area and concentrating them in one spot. It's like getting pre-made compost without turning a single pile. Some farmers even plan their fields around termite mounds, planting crops in circles surrounding them to take advantage of the nutrients that wash outward during rains. It's a perfect example of turning what many would consider a pest into a partner. letting termites do the fertilizer manufacturing while humans handle the harvesting. 4. Terracing on slopes. When faced with steep hillsides, Indigenous farmers didn't see obstacles. They saw opportunities waiting for a makeover. From the Philippines to Peru, people transformed seemingly unusable slopes into stepped agricultural masterpieces. They cut flat platforms into the hillside, each one supported by a wall of stones or packed earth. These terraces catch and hold rainwater that would otherwise rush downhill, giving plants time to drink their fill before the excess gently spills to the next level below. What would be a muddy landslide becomes a series of productive mini-fields instead. The Ifugao rice terraces in the Philippines follow the natural curves of mountains so perfectly they are called the eighth wonder of the world, while the ancient terraces of Machu Picchu still function after centuries of use. Beyond just stopping erosion, terraces create microclimates, sunny spots for heat-loving crops and shadier areas for plants that wilt in strong sun. The stone walls absorb daytime heat and release it slowly at night, protecting sensitive plants from cold snaps. Farmers didn't need engineering degrees to develop these systems. They learned through observation and adaptation, passing improved techniques through generations. 5. Shifting cultivation with rest periods. Indigenous farmers figured out long ago what modern agriculture sometimes forgets. Even soil needs a nap now and then. Across the Amazon and Southeast Asia, communities developed farming systems where they would clear small forest patches to grow crops for a few years, then move to new areas while the original plots rested and regrew. They weren't abandoning land out of carelessness. They were following a deliberate cycle that kept the whole system healthy. During rest periods, fast-growing trees and plants reclaim the area. Their roots pull up nutrients from deep underground, and fallen leaves rebuild the topsoil that was depleted during farming. This rotation system works because it mimics how forests naturally recover after disturbances. The Maya people of Central America perfected this approach over thousands of years, creating a patchwork landscape of active fields, young regrowth and mature forest. Each patch served different purposes, growing food, providing medicinal plants, or supplying building materials, while always moving toward recovery. The genius lies in understanding that productivity isn't about pushing land to its limits every season, but rather working within natural cycles of growth and rest. When done right, these systems can maintain food production indefinitely because they include healing time in the farming calendar. 6. Planting according to the moon cycle. Long before fancy weather apps and soil meters existed, Indigenous farmers looked up at the night sky for planting guidance. Many cultures from the Maya to the Maori noticed that the moon's pull affects more than just ocean tides. It influences how water moves through soil and plants too. During the waxing moon, moisture rises in both soil and plants. These first 2 weeks create perfect conditions for planting crops that develop above ground like lettuce, spinach and corn. The increasing moonlight and rising sap help seeds sprout faster and grow stronger right from the start. It's not mystic mumbo-jumbo, but practical observation of how natural cycles affect growing conditions. As the moon wanes, the energy shifts downward. This makes it the ideal time to plant root vegetables like potatoes, carrots and onions that develop below the soil surface. The Hopi people of the American Southwest coordinated their planting calendar with both lunar phases and seasonal markers, creating a natural timing system that maximized growth potential without any modern technology. They watched which wild plants bloomed when the moon reached certain positions, using these relationships as signals for when to plant different crops. This approach turns the night sky into a natural calendar anyone can read, helping farmers work with nature's rhythms instead of fighting against them. The best part? It costs nothing but attention and creates a connection between what happens in the sky and what happens in the soil. 7. Sunken beds in dry areas. In places where water is precious, Indigenous farmers flipped conventional wisdom upside down, literally digging down instead of building up. The Zuni people of the American Southwest and desert farmers in North Africa both developed sunken growing areas that sit below the surrounding ground level. These depressions create natural collection basins that catch and hold every drop of rainfall, allowing it to soak deeply into the root zone rather than running off. The surrounding higher edges also shield tender plants from drying winds that would otherwise steal moisture through evaporation, creating a protected microclimate in harsh environments. These sunken gardens, called waffle gardens by some Native American tribes because of their grid-like appearance from above, work on a simple principle: water flows downhill. By positioning plants in the low spots, farmers ensure roots get first access to precious moisture. In the Negev desert, ancient farmers even channeled occasional flash floods into these sunken fields, turning destructive water into life-giving irrigation. The lower soil stays moist much longer than raised beds would, reducing how often plants need watering. Some desert farmers add rocks around these depressions to collect morning dew and slowly release it to plants throughout the day. 8. Charcoal enrichment. The Amazon rainforest seems like the last place you would find rich, fertile soil. Heavy rains typically wash nutrients away quickly, yet some patches of incredibly dark, productive soil exist there, created by Indigenous farmers hundreds or even thousands of years ago. This terra preta, or black earth, contains abundant charcoal, deliberately mixed into the ground through generations of careful soil building. Unlike regular wood ash that quickly dissolves, charcoal persists for centuries, creating a permanent improvement to the soil structure. The partially burned material develops a honeycomb of tiny pores that act like high-rise apartments for beneficial soil microbes and hold nutrients that would otherwise wash away with the rain. The genius of this method lies in its longevity. While regular compost feeds plants for a season or two, these charcoal-enriched soils remain fertile for hundreds of years, with minimal maintenance. Amazonian farmers created it by burning agricultural waste in smouldering, oxygen-poor fires that produce charcoal rather than ash, then mixing it with food scraps, broken pottery, and manure to create super soil. The charcoal's incredible surface area. A spoonful can have the surface area of a football field when you count all the microscopic nooks and crannies, traps nutrients like a sponge holds water, then slowly releases them to plant roots. Modern scientists are now rebranding this ancient technique as biochar and promoting it as a breakthrough carbon sequestration method. But Indigenous farmers were already building better soil and pulling carbon from the atmosphere centuries before climate change became a concern. 9. Using animal manure efficiently. Indigenous farmers mastered the art of closing the loop long before sustainability became a buzzword. They recognized that what animals leave behind might look like waste, but actually represents concentrated plant food waiting to be used. Pastoral communities in Mongolia and East Africa developed rotational grazing systems where animals naturally distribute their manure across future growing areas. They would contain livestock on a field before the planting season, allowing the animals to deposit a layer of fertilizer exactly where it would be needed. The trampling hooves would work the manure into the soil surface, saving farmers the labor of spreading and mixing it themselves. Other cultures developed more elaborate manure management systems. The Quechua people in the Andes collect guinea pig droppings in specialized pens with slotted floors, creating a continuous supply of ready-to-use fertilizer without the heavy lifting. Many Indigenous farmers also learned to transform raw manure into something even more valuable through composting techniques that kill weed seeds and harmful bacteria while preserving nutrients. They often combined animal waste with plant materials in specific ratios that modern science has since confirmed provide ideal conditions for decomposition. The Aztec Chinampas system went further by fermenting human waste, aquatic plants and mud from lake bottoms into a super-rich fertiliser that helped create some of the most productive farmland ever developed. These approaches turn what could be a disposal problem into a valuable resource, completing the nutrient cycle from plants to animals and back to plants again. 10. Seed saving and selection. Perhaps the most powerful Indigenous farming practice doesn't involve fancy tools or complex systems, just careful observation and patience across generations. Traditional farmers worldwide developed the practice of setting aside seeds from their absolute best plants each season, creating a slow but steady improvement in their crops over time. They didn't know about genetics or DNA, but they understood that plants pass traits to their offspring. By consistently selecting seeds from plants that performed well in their specific conditions, those that survived drought, resisted local pests, or produced the tastiest food, they gradually developed varieties perfectly adapted to their unique growing environments. This careful selection created an incredible diversity of crop varieties, each with its own special properties. Andean farmers developed over 4,000 varieties of potatoes, each suited to specific elevations, soil types, and weather patterns. Their selection wasn't just about productivity. They chose for flavour, storage quality, cooking properties, and even cultural significance. Many Indigenous seed savers also practiced a sort of early risk management by maintaining a variety of crop types rather than focusing on just one best version. They recognised that conditions change from year to year, and a variety that struggles in one season might thrive in the next. This diversity provided insurance against crop failure and contributed to food security long before modern agriculture began emphasising uniformity and standardisation. Today's seed libraries and heirloom seed movements are essentially rediscovering what Indigenous farmers have known all along. 11. Natural pest control. Long before chemical companies sold bug spray in plastic bottles, Indigenous farmers developed their own effective pest management solutions, using what grew around them. Mexican farmers crushed garlic and hot peppers to make a spray that bugs find absolutely revolting. The natural oils that make your eyes water when chopping chilies do much worse to soft-bodied insects. In India and parts of Africa, neem tree leaves and seeds became the go-to pest deterrent, with compounds that disrupt insect feeding and growth cycles without harming the soil or beneficial insects like bees. The beauty of these natural solutions is that pests don't develop resistance to them the way they do with synthetic chemicals, and they break down naturally without leaving harmful residues on food or in the environment. Many tribes also used wood ash sprinkled around plants to create barriers against crawling pests like slugs and snails. The ash dries out their soft bodies, stopping them in their tracks. In Southeast Asia, farmers plant strong-smelling herbs like lemongrass and marigolds between their crops, creating confusion for pests that find their target plants by smell. The Navajos planted 4 o'clock flowers whose roots release compounds that repel tiny worms that damage plant roots. These methods don't eliminate all pests, and that's actually the point. They keep pest populations low enough to prevent serious damage while preserving the natural predators like ladybugs and praying mantises that provide free pest control services. It's a balanced approach that sees insects as part of the system rather than enemies to completely destroy. 12. Living fences. When Indigenous farmers needed to protect their fields from wandering animals or mark their boundaries, they didn't head to the hardware store for fencing materials. They planted them instead. Living fences made from densely planted thorny shrubs like hawthorn or closely spaced trees create barriers that grow stronger year after year, instead of deteriorating like wood or rusting like wire. In Central America, farmers plant rows of fast-growing gliricidia trees that quickly establish boundaries while their deep roots stabilize slopes and prevent erosion. The clever part? These living fences do multiple jobs at once. They keep livestock out of crop areas while providing them with nutritious leaves to eat, essentially growing animal feed right where it's needed. These green boundaries offer benefits no store-bought fence can match. In windy areas, they act as windbreaks that protect delicate crops and reduce moisture loss from the soil. Their flowers feed pollinators like bees and butterflies, boosting crop yields through better pollination. Many living fence plants like sisal or agave provide useful materials for rope making or fibre. In parts of Africa, farmers use euphorbia species whose milky sap is toxic enough to deter browsers, but whose tight growth creates impenetrable barriers. The best part of these living systems is that they are self-repairing. When branches break, they simply grow back. They actually improve with age rather than wearing out, and they never need paint or replacement parts. Plus, when a section does eventually die, it becomes firewood or building material before a new plant takes its place. 13. Intercropping for weed control. Indigenous farmers figured out something brilliant about weeds. They thrive in bare soil and empty spaces. So instead of fighting an endless battle against them, many cultures simply stopped giving weeds room to grow in the first place. By planting sweet potatoes, squash, or other spreading ground covers between their main crops, they created living mulch that shades out weeds before they can get established. The Mayan people mastered this approach with beans and squash, planted between corn rows, creating such dense plant coverage that weeds couldn't find enough light or space to survive. This method saves countless hours of weeding while keeping the soil cool and moist during hot weather. The beauty of using ground-covering food plants for weed suppression is that you get two harvests from the same space while doing less work. Sweet potatoes planted between rows of upright crops like corn or sorghum quickly spread their vines to cover any bare ground, smothering potential weeds while producing their own valuable root crop. In Southeast Asia, farmers plant taro or other leafy crops that quickly establish broad leaves that block light from reaching weed seeds. These ground covers do more than just control weeds. Their leaves catch raindrops before they hit the soil, preventing erosion during heavy storms. When their leaves eventually fall, they decompose right where they are needed, feeding soil life and adding organic matter. Unlike plastic weed barriers that eventually end up in landfills, these living mulches actually improve the soil while they work, turning a garden chore into a productive part of the farm system. 14. Water channels and ditches. Indigenous farmers developed water management systems that worked with gravity and landscape to direct precious moisture exactly where it needed to go. In the American Southwest, Pueblo farmers created networks of small stone-lined channels that captured rainfall from higher ground and guided it to their crops, essentially harvesting water from a much larger area than they actually farmed. These simple ditches, often just a foot wide, could mean the difference between crop failure and abundance in dry years. The Nabateans of the Middle East went even further, carving subtle channels into hillsides that were nearly invisible unless you knew what to look for, collecting thin sheets of rainfall from vast areas and concentrating it where food plants grew. Beyond just moving water to crops, many indigenous groups created systems to slow water's journey through their landscape, giving it time to soak into the soil rather than running off. Farmers in Indonesia and the Philippines built terraced rice paddies with cleverly designed spillways that passed water from one level to the next, allowing each field to take what it needed before sharing with those below. In drier regions, farmers dug small ponds or depressions at key points to collect and hold rainfall, creating moisture reserves that would slowly seep into surrounding soil long after the rain stopped. The Hohokam people of Arizona built hundreds of miles of irrigation canals without modern surveying equipment, creating perfectly graded channels that moved water at just the right speed, not so fast that it caused erosion, but not so slow that too much was lost to evaporation. These gravity-powered systems worked without pumps or electricity, using careful observation and generational knowledge, instead of fossil fuels to ensure crops got the water they needed. 15. Use of local plants as green manure. In parts of Africa, farmers grow sesbania trees between crop cycles, letting them reach several feet tall before cutting them down and leaving the nitrogen-rich leaves and branches on the soil surface. As these plants break down, they release a steady supply of nutrients that feed the next food crop. This chop and drop method builds soil fertility without requiring any outside inputs or long-distance transportation of materials. What makes this approach so clever is its timing. Many traditional farmers in Asia plant these green manure crops during seasons when they wouldn't be growing food anyway, during very dry periods or brief rainy seasons too short for main crops. The green manure plants often have deep root systems that bring up minerals from lower soil layers that food crops can't reach. When chopped down, these plants don't just provide nitrogen, they add carbon to the soil, feeding beneficial microbes that help plants absorb nutrients more efficiently. In Central America, farmers grow velvet beans that produce so much biomass they can completely transform poor soil into productive farmland in just a few growing cycles. Unlike commercial fertilizers that can wash away in heavy rain, the nutrients from green manures release slowly as plants decompose, matching the uptake rate of growing crops and reducing waste. 16. Using ants to protect crops. Long before anyone invented chemical pesticides, farmers in Southeast Asia and Africa were recruiting tiny armies to protect their crops. Citrus growers in Vietnam and China hang bamboo bridges between trees to help weaver ants move freely throughout their orchards. These territorial ants fiercely attack any insects that try to munch on the fruits or leaves, providing round-the-clock protection against caterpillars, beetles and fruit flies. The farmers sometimes feed the ants sugar water or fish paste to keep them happy and active, treating them more like livestock than pests. In return, the ants work tirelessly, patrolling every branch and leaf without ever taking a day off or asking for a raise. One colony can protect several trees, dramatically reducing crop damage without any spray or powder. This relationship goes beyond just pest control. In parts of Africa, farmers who work with ants report that their trees grow better overall, not just suffering less damage. The ants fertilize the soil around trees with their waste and the remains of insects they have caught, creating a nutrient-rich zone right where the tree needs it most. They also aerate the soil with their tunnels, helping water and oxygen reach the roots. Some ant species even kill fungal diseases that would otherwise harm the plants. Farmers in Thailand can get higher prices for their mangoes when they are ant protected, because the fruits develop better flavour and have no chemical residues. 17. Staggered planting times. Indigenous farmers rarely put all their corn seeds in the ground on the same day. Instead, they spread plantings over weeks or even months, creating a natural insurance policy against unpredictable weather. Maya farmers in Central America might plant their first corn patch at the earliest possible date, another batch 2 weeks later, and a final group a month after that. If a late frost kills the early plants, the later ones survive. If drought strikes mid-season, the early and late plantings might make it through. This approach spreads both risk and reward across the growing season, ensuring that at least some crops will succeed, no matter what surprises the weather brings. The benefits go beyond just weather protection. Staggered planting creates staggered harvesting, providing a steady supply of fresh food rather than a single overwhelming bounty that might spoil before it can all be eaten or processed. It also spreads out the workload, allowing farmers to focus proper attention on each batch of plants during crucial periods like weeding and harvesting. In the Andes, potato farmers plant different varieties at different times and elevations, creating a harvest season that can last months instead of weeks. This approach even confuses pests. as insects that might build up to damaging numbers if all plants were at the same growth stage get disrupted when they encounter patches at different stages of development. The trick doesn't require any special equipment or extra land, just timing adjustments that turn a potential all-or-nothing gamble into a much safer bet with multiple chances to succeed. 18. Dryland farming techniques. In places where rain comes rarely and wells run dry, Indigenous farmers develop methods to coax crops from seemingly impossible conditions. The Hopi and Zuni peoples of the American Southwest mastered the art of planting corn at surprising depths, sometimes 10 to 14 inches below the surface, where moisture lingers long after the surface has dried to dust. They carefully select planting spots where seasonal runoff naturally collects, creating invisible water harvesters without building any permanent structures. In Morocco's Atlas Mountains, farmers don't fight the harsh sun. They work with it, planting heat-loving crops like figs and olives on south-facing slopes that receive maximum sunlight, while tucking moisture-loving plants like mint and leafy greens into north-facing pockets that stay shadier and cooler. Space becomes a precious resource in dryland farming, but not in the way you might think. Desert farmers often plant crops with wide spacing between each plant, sometimes leaving 3 to 4 feet between corn stalks that would be inches apart in wetter regions. This wide spacing means each plant gets its own larger underground water catchment area instead of competing with neighbours. In the Negev desert, Bedouin farmers place individual vines or trees at the lowest point of small hand-shaped catchments that funnel morning dew and rare rainfall directly to the roots. Many desert cultures also use rock mulches, placing stones around plants to reduce evaporation, collect evening dew, and prevent wind from drying the soil. The stones cool during the night, causing moisture in the air to condense on their surfaces before dripping into the soil below. 19. Crop rotation for soil health. Indigenous farmers discovered that growing the same crop in the same spot year after year leads to declining harvests and increasing pest problems. Their solution was brilliantly simple. Keep moving things around. The Iroquois developed rotations where corn would grow in a field one year, beans the next, then squash, followed by a rest period where nothing was planted. This dance of different crops prevents any one type of plant from completely depleting specific nutrients from the soil. Corn takes a lot of nitrogen, beans add it back, and squash has different needs altogether. By the time corn returns to that field years later, the soil has recovered everything it needs to support a strong harvest again. This rotation approach does more than just maintain nutrient balance. Different plant families attract different insects and are susceptible to different diseases. When farmers rotate crops from different families, they break the life cycles of specialized pests and pathogens that would otherwise build up in the soil year after year. Andean potato farmers developed elaborate rotations, incorporating quinoa, corn, and fallow periods that could maintain production for decades without outside inputs. Some rotations even included specific plants grown not for food, but specifically to combat soil-borne diseases or flush out pests, like certain mustard family plants that produce natural fumigants when turned into the soil. In North America, native farmers would watch for specific weeds that indicated when soil was ready for certain crops again. Modern science has validated these approaches, confirming that diversified crop rotations increase soil organic matter, improve water retention, and reduce the need for both fertilizers and pesticides compared to continuous monoculture of a single crop. 20. Digging pits. Some of the most productive farming systems in dry parts of Africa started with simple holes in the ground. Farmers in Burkina Faso, Niger, and other Sahel countries dig shallow pits called zai or tassa across their fields before the rainy season. These pits, usually about the size of a dinner plate and a few inches deep, become targeted growing spots where farmers add a handful of compost, manure or plant material. When rain finally arrives, it collects in these depressions instead of running off the hard-baked soil surface. The concentrated water and nutrients create perfect germination spots in otherwise difficult growing conditions. One farmer with simple tools can transform a degraded field into productive farmland by digging hundreds of these small pits. The magic happens when the rains come. Water pools in the pits, soaking deeply into the soil exactly where crop roots will grow, instead of running off across the surface. The compost in each pit acts like a sponge, holding moisture much longer than the surrounding soil. In West African countries where these methods have spread, farmers report harvests tripling or quadrupling after adopting pit systems. The approach turns limitations into advantages. The harder and more compacted the surrounding soil, the better the pits work at directing water where it's needed most. As crops grow and their roots break up the soil, the areas between pits gradually improve too. The technique has helped reclaim thousands of acres of degraded land that was once considered too dry or damaged to farm. What makes this method so powerful is its accessibility. Anyone with a hoe and access to compost can start small and expand year by year, gradually transforming fields without needing expensive equipment or outside resources. Which of these hacks will you be trying out? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section.